Discover how you can green your life by building a knowledge base of current sustainable and eco-savvy trends. This series will delve into hot topics, current standards and practices, ways to design better spaces, and specify materials that benefit not only us as consumers, but the world as a whole. Members of CaraGreen, as sustainable materials distributors, and other industry leaders weigh in throughout the series. This is Build Green, Live Green.
Hi, this is Jessica with Build Green, Live Green, CaraGreen's podcast on issues and products in the green building industry. And today we have Lily Turner with us from UrbanStrong. She's the Director of Sales and Operations. Welcome, Lily.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always nice to chat with like-minded folks.
So can you tell me a little bit about kind of your role at UrbanStrong, what UrbanStrong does and what you specifically focus on in your role?
Sure thing. You read my title completely perfect. That's what it says in my business card. But as I kind of explained before, we're really a boutique design shop. And depending on where we are in the project, my role completely changes. So just on a high level, I run and deal with anything vertical, any kind of vertical greenery solution. So it could be a living wall, a preserved moss wall, or some kind of sophisticated irrigated trellis system. And UrbanStrong as a whole is a green building firm based in Brooklyn, New York. And we also offer green roof and solar top solutions as well.
So one of the things that we focus on at CaraGreen with our products is, biophilic design. So behind me, this is a wall covering from organoid made out of sunflower petals. So we're always trying to find kind of innovative ways to bring nature into a space, whether it's natural wood grain or, something organic like this. But the most literal kind of instantiation of biophilic design is what UrbanStrong focuses on, which is those moss walls, those living walls, those real bringing nature inside systems. And it's not something, that we currently play in. So can you talk a little bit about what the company, how it was founded, and how important biophilic design is into, in terms of your customer base and the applications you go after?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't speak for the principal, Alan, but I think I have the story straight. But I think it just, from our principal's experience of just traveling the world, mainly in large cities, he's lived in anywhere from London and Shanghai and just recently settled in New York City about 8 years ago. And I think something that he noticed, especially in the United States, is that it seems to be pretty segregated, meaning that people often see nature and a built environment as mutually exclusive, but it doesn't have to be. You can absolutely, especially with the advancements that we've made in our vertical greenery technology, like a living wall, you can have both. And I think up until really 10 years ago, the conversation was, okay, should we put a apartment complex or a parking garage, or should we have this as a nice pocket park? But what's great about especially living walls is, again, you can have both and utilize bare blank walls that you wouldn't think of normally. And what really drives the conversation is what you mentioned, biophilic design. And for any listeners that aren't familiar, and I'm sorry if this is repetitive, but really simply, biophilic design is humans' innate connection to anything natural. So simply put, life is attracted to other forms of life. And by understanding that so much of the architecture of humans' minds and bodies and spirits are so deeply woven within the natural world, our building designs can really be influenced and for the better to really maximize occupant comfort. And of course, there's a whole litany of environmental services it brings too. So living walls is just one example of nature in this space, but they quite literally can improve indoor air quality, which is 2 to 5 times more polluted on average than outdoor air quality, which is terrible. They can enhance cognitive performance and improve health and well-being. So for an employee, this could mean an improvement in productivity and creativity. For a student, this could mean higher test scores. For a recovering patient for post-op surgery, this could mean a shorter stay in a hospital or just a reduction in post-operation complications. That's really common. It just really can reduce stress levels and enhance those feelings of health and well-being.
Well, and I like how you tied that back to kind of the human individual experience, because I think, certainly when CaraGreen started and probably UrbanStrong, ran into some of this too, but, the green building was seen as these certifications and these standards and these point-based credit systems. And what was happening, you were getting these LEED buildings cropping up, and you could walk into that building and it looked modern, but there was nothing about it that screamed, sustainability or anything like that. And what you just pointed out were the reasons that I think biophilic design is so important is the data is there to back it up to show that it works. And biophilic design, unlike LEED or WELL or some of the other standards, is not an all or nothing, right? There's not a, you have to do this to meet the base criteria. Biophilic design is different in that you can put a living wall in and everyone has that great experience and it has all those emotional and physiological benefits, but you don't have to do everything else with it, right? It can be the one thing that you do for your employees to bring biophilic design into a space. It's a very literal way of doing that, and the effects are immediate. So, I like all those data points and all those benefits that you brought up, because it makes it so much more tangible, achievable, and real to people like our listeners.
Sure.
So talk a little bit about, being in New York City. What type of spaces are looking for, kind of living walls? I mean, it's, I'm sure there's some residential type applications, but, one of the things we're hearing a lot about is you kind of this hybrid go, back to work thing is creating a lot of foot traffic, kind of, get out of the apartment during lunch and walk around, or, walk to the office, but kind of this almost this transient retail clientele. Mm-hmm. And the retailers are having an interesting time trying to figure out what people want when they come back into their retail spaces. So what has your experience been, in New York City around kind of that retail experience, this kind of workplace, back to work, and what's happening there, and how are living walls a part of that?
Right. It's a great point to bring up. Great question. I'll start with offices just because a handful of our most recent projects have been in office spaces or atriums. I think as we return and continue to return to the post-pandemic office space, the COVID's really lifted a veil and just brought and put emphasis on the importance of bringing greenery into your space that you spend arguably 90% of your time in because of the benefits that we just mentioned. So it's really nice to see that companies are investing in their employees and investing in their health by bringing these green wall solutions in, which is great. As for the retail, I think it's really tough just with e-commerce just coming up and just consuming them, no pun intended, but like I'm not a fashionista by any means, but as an average consumer, like I definitely prefer to order something online and then return it and not have to interact with any human, because I can do that on my lunch break. I can do that while I'm walking down the street or late at night. I don't have the time to go into Bloomingdale's or Nordstrom. And recognizing this, I think those retail brands are doing a really great job of thinking outside of the box and kind of wondering how they can activate the lobby space so it's not just a place for them to, their customers to buy a product. And our living walls can do that. So in the past, I've designed for pop-up walls and permanent walls, and they've served as living advertisements or living billboards for any kind of collaborators. Let's just use Hennessy, a liquor brand as an example, but you can superimpose and overlay a logo there, treating it again as a living advertisement, or you can incorporate some kind of barcode or QR code to scan for a giveaway. Or, if you just want it for aesthetics, you can just create a really nice Instagrammable backdrop, have someone take a picture of it, upload it, and then you're getting that exposure. And, it's letting people know that this brand is still relevant. And also just associating with your brand with something progressive and innovative as a living wall, you're kind of communicating that fresh, sustainable message that your company cares about green initiatives and focused on, what we're moving towards.
So I have a lot of envy about, your comment about, the living moss wall, because it's such an immediate story and the recognition is there. So to be affiliated with a moss wall is clear that you care about the environment. Whereas a lot of our products, you look at Durat solid surface and you don't know that it's, 28% recycled plastic. We've got to tell that story, and that's kind of our role, is telling that story. But I think it's so nice that you have this product where the story is the aesthetic of the material.
Sure. Yeah.
In New York City is going to be a different situation, right? A lot of the space is, there's space constraints, but one of the areas where there is space that's kind of being redesigned, you mentioned, is some of these rooftops. Can you talk a little bit about the rooftops and like kind of what's happening there? Are they residential kind of common areas? Are they office spaces? Are they cocktail lounges? Are they all of the above? Kind of what's happening in New York on the roof?
Yeah, so on a high level, New York City just passed 3 local laws, and 2 of them are pretty much the same overlapping language. But basically, any building over a certain square footage that's doing any kind of small renovation to their roof or just being built from the ground up has to incorporate a green roof some kind of wind solution or solar, or sometimes solar integrated green roof, which is a newer technology we also specialize in the design for. And so that kind of brings green roofs immediately to the New York City rooftops. But like what I love about green roofs and living walls is we refer to them as these Swiss Army knives of solutions, meaning even if you're just complying with localized, so you avoid fines and greening your space, your occupants and your building administration, whoever has access to that rooftop still gets all of those other amenities, which is really nice. So frankly, I don't really care the reasoning behind why they're incorporating these green roofs or the living walls, as long as it happens, because it's still sequestering carbon. It's absorbing stormwater. It's creating these really nice amenity spaces. It's creating these restorative areas for people after work or whatever long day that they need to refresh and kind of restart themselves. So that's really exciting to see people just utilizing those rooftops, which otherwise they wouldn't have a need for.
So I can visualize the living walls and the spaces, and I can kind of visualize these rooftops. When I think about the rooftops, I think less, I think more horizontally than vertically. What do your products and services, like how does it work? Where is the moss coming from? Where's the preserved moss coming from? Are these partnerships you've developed? On the green roofs, are these plants that you procure, or are you doing the design? Can you talk a little bit about that whole process?
Yeah, absolutely. So UrbanStrong is a design, build, maintenance building firm, absolutely, especially when it comes to living walls and green roofs. So we kind of are with you through the whole process, which is really nice. A lot of our partners have taken years to kind of form, but we've also carefully vetted. So what makes us different from other green roof or living wall companies is that we refer to ourselves as technology agnostic, meaning we don't see that there's a universal solution or that not one size fits all, which is really nice. So if someone comes to us and doesn't have access to plumbing, or it's not in the budget to bring in supplemental lighting, then I'm not going to suggest our most sophisticated, highly engineered living wall system that needs all of that to operate, properly. I'm probably going to suggest a preserved moss wall because, again, the main goal the client, is after is bringing greenery into the space to maximize the occupant's comfort and experience. When it comes to green roofs, we have some really fantastic partners, and they're constantly just challenging themselves and advancing their own technology just out of their own will to see what they can do. So some of our installation partners in DC, up top, the JF Kennedy building, they started off with a green roof, and the client was like, can we incorporate an exterior living wall? And then it turned out we can integrate this entire system. So it's a green roof that corkscrews very subtly into a living wall, which is really cool to see. So the two technologies are working together. But typically people that come to us are either in heavy renovation or new construction, because again, just to support a green roof and a living wall, you need to first understand the structural integrity. You need to question, okay, how is water coming into these systems? And more importantly, how is it draining out and how is it flowing out? So it's a really long process. The last installation that I just completed took over 14 months just to coordinate with all the engineers and the mechanical teams and electric and everything. So it might seem like very simple, just plants on a wall, but they're actually highly engineered systems that are absolutely a part of the building's DNA. It's incredible.
So in New York City in the winter, are the green roofs, are they designed so they go dormant in the winter and then you come back in the spring and kind of revitalize them?
Yeah, absolutely. So for both green roofs and living walls, whenever you're designing a plant palette, the climate that ultimately your living wall or green roof will live in is extremely important to consider. Meaning, I'm in Maine currently right now. So if I was designing a living wall in Northeast, I would not stick an avocado tree, no matter how good it looked, no matter how great of a story it told, because I would need to plant to the climate. And so what's chosen typically in New York City are blooming perennials or evergreens that can withstand, sub-freezing temperatures just in case, because green roofs, after you go up a certain story, you're dropping zones, right? So you actually need to design for an even colder climate. It also depends how much light access you have. In New York City, every building is just sandwiched by even taller skyscraper. So you need to design more for shade-tolerant species. Sedum's really great for that. Dormancy is to be expected, but there's plenty of species that still will hold their foliage and evolve with the seasons. So it's not going to completely drop and look like dead sticks on your roof or, on your exterior living wall. It can still look like a nice winter wonderland with, really nice juniper and evergreen shrubs planted.
I grew up in Vermont, so I completely understand that.
Yeah.
What it looks like. Okay, so for our listeners, as we kind of near the end here of the podcast, can you tell them your website, what to follow, how they would engage with you? What is the customer you want calling you, saying, hey, I'm with this sports chain and we want to put a living wall in because we don't want people feeling like they're coming from concrete New York City to concrete sports store. We want them to feel like they actually go inside to get outside, right? So they want to kind of create that. Is that kind of your target client, and how does the engagement work from that point on?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we love working with the end client directly, but again, like given our requirements from a structural standpoint and irrigation and electric, typically we are first engaged with the architect or a building owner or an engineer really early on before the building's even built or even they get the permitting for. So sometimes our sales cycles, especially for roofs, because it's the last to go in, can be 2-3 years. But really anyone, we're starting to offer more consumer grade products that we really kicked off during the pandemic. For a living wall, again, it's not always feasible, not just from a coordination standpoint, but just simply fixed costs that are associated with supporting a living wall or a green roof. Yeah. So knowing that, we offer smaller moss walls on our online shop and also smaller plant frames too that you can just mount to the wall, no different than a heavy picture frame or a shelf, and just fill up and let capillary wicking action do its thing. So our website is UrbanStrong.com, and they are call to action chat buttons constantly popping up. We love to talk, even if it's just with like-minded folks and it doesn't go anywhere. Our Instagram is UrbanStrongNYC. Someone's constantly on that, posting and engaging with people and collaborating with partners. I believe we have a Twitter account, but that stuff's on the website. I'm not really a Twitter person. And then I can give you my email to post to, but info@urbanstrong.com I also have access to. So there's a few ways to drop us a line and talk about the project.
Well, that's great. Well, so to our listeners, if anyone's interested in hearing more about moss walls, Lily's here to answer your questions. And Lily, thanks for, bringing biophilic design into the mainstream here and making it such a easy and tangible way to kind of, help do all those things, increase productivity, help people feel better, calmer. All those things are very real and tangible metrics. So thanks for being on our podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Take care.
This is Jessica with Build Green, Live Green.